Hi, my name is Oggy Brewer. I am the creator of MOPO Max Out, Payout, MOPO the Day, and today I get to be on UNFREAKINGBELIEVABLE podcast.
Welcome to another episode of Unfreaking Believable. We invite you to pull up a chair, relax, and join in for the next 30 minutes or so as we bring you guests who will share with you the moments that have made a difference in their lives. And it's all because of that one inciting incident. We believe that life is infinitely stranger than fiction, stranger than anything the mind can invent. You might even say it's unfreaking believable. Welcome to the podcast. We're your hosts, and I'm Jenny.
I'm Jen. I'm Betsy. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Not too bad. Not too bad. I'm almost done moving storage units. So close.
I'm almost done moving.
Yeah.
So close. Well, painting so I can move. I never realized how big of a house this was until I had to paint every inch of it.
And I have been busy just taking care of visiting with my mom while she has been having some health issues and she's in the hospital. So just been busy with that.
Being a devoted daughter.
Good
Yes.
All right. Jen, you have a word for the day.
I do. And I think I chose it for today because of just how hectic, in particular, you guys' lives have been recently. And I know that all three of us are overthinkers, right? We all tend to overthink, especially when we're under stress. So for the word today, we have pettifoggery.
Pettifoggery.
Pettifoggery. And that's giving too much attention to details that are not important.
I call that being pedantic. So I like that I have a new word for it. Pettifoggery.
So pedantic.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I didn't know pettifoggery until recently. So
it's all good. Jenny's got some fun facts for us, though.
I do. I got two fun facts for us today. In 1979, a young woman named Elvita Adams attempted to take her own life by jumping from the 86th floor observation deck at the Empire State Building. However, a huge gust of wind blew her back into a ledge on the 85th floor where she was eventually rescued.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I tell you, if she had second thoughts when she jumped, I mean, that is a miracle right there in itself,
Wow.
I would say.
Wow.
I mean, I think you could make it, an argument if you were a particularly spiritual person that a certain guardian angel made use of their wings at that moment.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, here we go. My second fun fact of the day is about Abraham Lincoln's eldest son, Robert Todd Lincoln. And remarkably, he was present at or near 3 presidential assassinations, leading to him getting a reputation as the harbinger of doom in some circles. He was present for Abraham Lincoln's assassination, James A. Garfield, and William McKinley.
Wow.
So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's not a moniker you want to get attached to you. The harbinger of doom.
No way.
No, I mean, even being present for that many attempts, what are the odds? It's crazy. Well, I'm pretty excited about today's guest. I have some real interest in what he's going to talk about. So are we ready to get started?
Yeah, sure. Let's do this. Today, I am thrilled to introduce an incredibly inspiring guest who was recommended to us from our friends at the Middle-Aged and Creeped Out podcast, and his name is Oggy Brewer. Oggy is a dedicated high school biology teacher and a boys basketball coach with nearly 2 decades of experience shaping the mind and lives of the young people both in the classroom and on the court. Over the past 19 years, he's also coached girls basketball, junior high school cross country, football, and track, leaving a lasting impact on every team he's worked with. Outside of his professional life, Oggy has been married to his wife, Beth, for 22 years, and together they have raised 4 children. What sets Oggy apart is his passion for the MOPO brand, which we will get into later. And I can't wait to learn more about Oggy's journey and hear about his experiences as a coach and a teacher. So, Oggy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you guys having me on tonight.
Well, as a former teacher myself, it was pretty exciting to me when I saw that in your bio. It was like almost like having a relative come to visit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things as you probably can say, like, I'm on my 22nd year of teaching, and it's like, where did the time go?
Yeah, can go fast.
Well, I think that probably I was alternating from where did the time go to how long have I been doing this?
There there are those days, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I retired at 30. And when I hit the 30-year mark, I was ready to move on to the next chapter,
Yeah.
quite literally.
Well,
So,
I tell my kids this is school. I teach freshmen, mostly freshman biology. There are some kids that are sophomores, but I have my oldest is starting his first year of college, and then I have a junior daughter, a ninth grade daughter, and a fifth grade boy. And so I'm in it at home too. So I try to tell the kids, like, I can relate to some of the things you're going through because I get to see some of these same habits and things going on at home with my own kids.
Yeah.
it really does make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. What keeps you motivated after 19 years of teaching and coaching?
Well, no question. Like, I have not lost the love of going into school every single day. I'll back up and say, when I can still remember as a young kid, that's what my dad did, was go and teach and coach and part of a school system. And I can remember as a kid going, I'd like to do that someday. And, one, I always say this to the kids, kind of funny is, on those days when there used to be days in elementary where the high school and middle school kids went to school and the elementary kids didn't. And I'd always get to go with dad to school on those days. Well, dad was a PE teacher at the time, and they would play dodgeball on those days. So I got to play dodgeball all day, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And I'd say, this is what I want to do when I grow up. Uh,
As soon as somebody mentions dodgeball, I can hear the ping of that red ball. You know?
yeah,
That's Gen X
Yeah.
trauma right there is what that is.
Totally took one in the face once, so I get that.
yeah. And now you can't play that sport anymore, right? Um,
No,
but what I was going to say is, I know, that's one of the reasons that, I wanted to be a teacher, is because I got to see my dad do what he did and to go along with him. But now, as I've been in it for 22 years, that's not the reason I'm in it to go play dodgeball. The reason I'm in it now is to build relationships and to help young people succeed. And there's a drive to that every day going into work.
that's awesome.
Right
So,
on.
you obviously have a passion and a mission with your kids. Did you go in thinking I'm going to just teach biology? Is that what you had in mind when you thought when you wanted to be a teacher? Was that ever in the plan? I'm just going to go in. I'm just going to teach biology.
Yeah, so I have a heavy sports background, and really the other part, probably more so than anything, was like, hey, I want to be a teacher so I can coach and I can
Gotcha.
get into the school system and be a part of teams. And that was probably the first drive, to be honest with you. And I have a PE biology combo. And so I've had years, it's been really good. I've had years, some years where I've taught half day PE, half day bio. And those are kind of fun years to do that. Now I've went, most years have been all biology.
Very good.
Well, definitely, I love your attitude toward teaching. And I always said, and it sounds like you feel very much the same way, that when I stop loving it, that's when I should stop doing it, because it's not fair to the kids if you don't love
Yeah.
being there. And I still loved the kids when I left, but I was loving the administrivia of teaching a lot less by that time.
Absolutely.
So,
There's obviously, everybody has the challenges, and everybody has, I think I always tell the kids, like, the number one thing you got to be as a teacher is flexible. You got to be willing to just go with the flow. And I think, that's life too, right? In life, you got to do that. But, how many times, maybe there's a fire drill, or maybe there's you had something planned that was going to happen, and then it doesn't happen because just something else happens. But just your ability to be flexible and your ability to go with the flow, I think, is very important.
And that's a survival skill. Definitely, definitely. So when you were younger, before you were teaching, were you an athlete younger, and that's what led you to wanting to coach?
Yeah, so I grew up. I had an older brother. I had a younger sister as well. Like I said, my dad was in education. He was the eighth grade basketball coach at our middle school for a number of years, and so he got to coach me when I was in eighth grade. But I would say I can still remember as an eighth grader, and I'd gotten to watch my older brother play in high school, his 4 years, and I always looked forward to that. And that whole thing when you're a kid and you have that dream, like, man, I'm going to play for my high school uh, team, and I'm going to get to be a part of that. And I think there was that when I don't know what the majesty of the I don't that's probably not the right word, but the majestic part of being a part of a community and being on the high school varsity team and get an opportunity to play that way. And so, watching my older brother, having my dad as a coach, that instilled in me, that's what I wanted to do. And then I got an opportunity to play in college as well. So I have that background too.
So, Augie, I am sure our listeners are eager to hear why we brought you on the show, and that is to tell us your unfreaking believable story. So, the microphone is all yours. We'd like to thank the sponsor of this episode, Cultured Creature Beard Balm. Do you have a bearded someone in your life, possibly yourself, who's looking a little unruly? Meet man's new best friend, Cultured Creature Beard Balm.
Culture Creature Beard Balm is a game changer, made with all natural ingredients like mango butter, shea butter, argan, avocado, jojoba, grapeseed, and meadow foam seed oil. It nourishes your man's beard and skin beneath. Say goodbye to dryness and itchiness and hello to a soft, well-groomed, and great-smelling beard.
Not only will it tame a manly mane, but it will also leave you with a subtle masculine scent with options like Cuban tobacco, sandalwood and bourbon, cedar and leather, and more. You'll feel confident all day, whether it's in the office, a night out on the town, or at the gym.
Cultured Creature Beard Balm is handmade, organic, and natural. It's made by a father-daughter duo with over 20 years of beard care experience, and it's made right here in the USA.
If you're ready to see your man's beard transformed, visit refineyourwildside.com and use promo code UFB10 for an extra 10% off your first order. Plus, all Culture Creature Beard Balm products are already 20% off, so that's 30% off your first order.
Cultured Creature Beard Balm, where nature meets nurture for the ultimate beard care experience. Don't tame your wild side, refine it with Cultured Creature Beard Balm.
All right. Well, I have a bucket list of things, and one of my bucket list things was to write a book. And during the COVID times, we have all this time at home, and what are you going to do with that time? And I know I have young kids and things, but there's lots of time in the day during that time, and so that was inspiration that time to write this book. And I'll back up until the beginning of this. Probably about 5 years after my wife and I got married, we were going to take a trip, and I said, being a coach and having that background, I decided to give the trip a name, and the name I gave it was MOPO. I said to my wife, "Let's MOPO the trip," and my wife is looking at me crazy. What does that even mean? And so when I tell her, I said, "Hey, MOPO stands for Max Out." And at the time, it stood for pass out, max out, pass out. And the thought process being, we're gonna go each day and just get everything out of each day. And I'll say, as a young kid, I was that kind of kid. Like whatever I did, I wanted to be all in. I wanted to give my best effort, and I've lived my life that way. And so that was the thought process. And then we have kids, and the MOPO continued. When you have young kids, you're trying to max out the day to make them pass out at the end of the day. And so the theme
Boy, that's
worked.
right.
Okay. And then, as I said, I got ready to, I said, I want to write a book about this idea. And I've read, again, being into sports, Mark Cuban, is the guy for the Dallas Mavericks. And I read where he would answer emails. And he's obviously on Shark Tank as well. And that's another place that I've seen him, and most people have. And so I thought, I'm going to send him an email and ask him what he thinks of this MOPO idea. Mark Cuban's from Indiana. I'm from Indiana. I have this in common with him. So I'll write that in my email to him. And, I send it and not really expecting Mark Cuban to answer. He's a billionaire. And about 15 minutes later, I get a ding, and I look down, and it says an answer from Mark Cuban. And it's not only from Mark, I sent him an email to a certain web email site, but this was from his personal site. And so I was like, oh, this must be really him.
Wow.
And so he says, he only has like 8 words in there. Augie, don't tell kids to pass out. And that may be more than less than, but that was his response to me. And so the light bulb started going on in my head about, okay, he's probably got a good point. and being the teacher and the coach, so I thought more about it, and that's where I came up with, okay, the P could stand for payout. And so that's where MOPO originated. That's how it came to be. Instead of max out, pass out is now max out, payout. And I really stress that. And so the thought process with MOPO is we're going to max out something to earn our payout. And most of the time you have to think about that. Like, what do you want your payout to be? And I can use this in my classroom from the standpoint of, I have these high school kids that, not every one of them wants to be in biology class, but, how can I make this and as enjoyable for them as I can? And so I bring this in and like, okay, hey, what are you here for? What is your purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? And so I talked to them about the payout first, and I said, okay, how are we going to do it? What are you gonna max out to get what this payout is? And so I bring that to them. I've made up wristbands that have the MOPO the day. I say that a lot to the kids. What's MOPO the day? That's the theme. And so they put these, I give them the wristbands. And, I'm not going to say all of them wear them. And, they're at that stage where they don't want to tell you something's cool. But if they're wearing them, if they are wearing them, and I see a lot of them wear them, I'm like, hey, I've connected in some way with them. And that is the goal, try to connect with them. And then, hey, as I connect with them, then we can get something done in the classroom. And so I didn't set out to really, I didn't know exactly where MOPO is going. I still don't always know where MOPO is going, but I did. I accomplished my goal. I figured out how to write a book, and I wrote the book. It's called MOPO the Day, Max Out, Payout. And then I got to thinking, what else can I do with this? And I mean, besides what I'm doing in the classroom with the wristbands and that kind of thing, I had a Tony Dungy calendar, a desk calendar, and I look up to Tony Dungy. He was I'm from Indiana, Indianapolis Colts. He won the Super Bowl coaching the Colts, and so I had this calendar. It was a daily, had a Bible verse for each calendar or each day, and so I decided, you could probably do something like that. I don't know how you're going to produce it, but so I started writing. And one of the things for a school teacher and for most places, just having a quick thought for the day, and having a daily Bible verse give you some direction for the day. And so I wrote out all my content. I had a guy from church where I kind of presented like, hey, what would it take to do this? He gave me some direction. Next thing you know, I produced this desk calendar. And so I know it was the first time I'd done anything like that, but I was excited about getting it produced and having it done. And so that happened. And then I thought, my kids I got 2 teenage daughters. My first kid's going to college. and my youngest is elementary, so I'm all over the map here as a dad, trying to connect with my kids at home. And I also know, just talking to friends that are my age and friends that have people that have kids that are my ages, how difficult you start talking and everyone's saying the same thing. Like, hey, do your teenage daughters, do they just want to spend all their time in their room, or do they talk to you? And lots of times it's, yeah, they like to come home and just be in their room, and they want to be on their phones. And so you're trying to balance all this as a dad, but also, connect with them. And so I decided that, God put on my heart to make another calendar. And it's really, hey, what advice or what wisdom would I pass down to my kids, and have a daily thought of what that is. And so I started, I'd go to church and listen to sermons. I'd read different things, social media, get on different things, and anything that was kind of related to being a father, being a parent, I jot it down. And so then I end up coming up with 365 days worth of things. And then I got into my Bible, and I tried to get a Bible verse that related to what my thought was. And I have also, with each week, kind of a MOPO life lesson. Okay, so to give you an example, I said I have, like, keep dating your spouse. That's a good life lesson. I'm still trying to do that myself, and like I said, I've been married 22 years. But just trying to share that with the next generation. And so I was able to create that, and my calendar is I've sent it away. It's supposed to come back to me December 10th, so I'm super excited about that.
Just in time for Christmas shopping.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly. Yeah, I was looking at your website, and what I really like is some of the philosophies that you have in there, that as a father and a mother, that you max out spending time with your kids, and the payout is that better relationship with your kids as they grow up and grow into adulthood. And that's kind of where we are now with our family, is our kids have both left the nest, they're grown up, they're on their own, and I feel like we have such a rich relationship with our kids, even though one of them's a little bit farther away. They still pick up the phone, they call, they text. And I think that's so important. I think it's so easy to get disconnected in this busy life that we're in, that connection with your kids is so important. So kudos to you on that.
Well, that's really cool. Your kids have that relationship with you as well. My like I said, my oldest went to college, so you're trying to navigate it, right? And I can remember, I had
Yep.
this conversation with my buddies whose kids started college this year too. I said, man, the first 2 weeks I'm wanting to call him or text him, and I'm just like, I also want him to have his space. And so I'm debating what I should do. And the first week I didn't do anything. I didn't text him, I didn't call him. And then the next week it just got to me, so I text him, and it was like, when he texted me back, it was like, Dad, where you been? Like, like, why haven't you text me or called me? And that whole thing of, like, just again trying to navigate that and trying to understand what the best way to go here. Give them space, but also let them know you love them, and you're still wanting to be a part of what they're doing.
Yeah. The running joke in Oklahoma is we ask our kids, have you checked the weather today? And that's just a reminder that I'm looking out for your safety. Something's going to happen, and it's time for you to do your own checking at this point.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things that is so great about having you on this particular episode is that when this airs tomorrow will be Thanksgiving. And so I think a lot of the MOPO philosophy, as I understand it, it is about, giving 100% and putting it all in, but it's also about gratitude. It's very much about having an appreciation for the present, and the things that you have in your life every single day, and just kind of being present and being thankful for those things, which makes that the perfect Thanksgiving episode.
Absolutely. I
Topic,
love
I
what you
think.
just said there. And Yeah, so I tried to like create some pillars of MOPO, like I said, to talk about with the kids and what that means, and gratitude definitely is one of them. And one of my shares as I've went through this, um, when COVID hit, it wasn't very nice to me. I decided I'd get my vaccine, and 3 days later after getting it, my body, my legs went numb, and so I was trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm like you said, I'm a sports guy, and I try to take care of myself, and I try to exercise, and for me, lots of times I'll go in the morning and get on the treadmill. Well, when my legs went numb, uh, it wasn't, I get on the treadmill, it wasn't the same. I wasn't having the same movement. And so at that time, it was really hard to get into a doctor, especially to maybe even get into a neurologist. But I finally was able to. We ran a bunch of tests. We finally did a spinal tap test. We did, this numbness went all the way through my body. And long story short, they ended up diagnosing me with MS, multiple sclerosis. And for the best way I feel like I've read to describe this is if you have a phone charger cord that's the outside of the cord, has been damaged and you try to plug it in. I've had one of those cords before. You try to plug it in, it won't charge your phone, so you have to jiggle the cord and then finally it maybe start charging the cord. It's kind of the same way with um, the neurons and the nerves in my brain trying to reach different parts of my body. And MS, it hits everybody different, and so, you know, when you get that kind of diagnosis, hey, you have MS, you just stop in your tracks and you think, well, what does that mean? Does that mean, I'm gonna die? And as you said, I mean, it brings a perspective to your life of going, hey, okay, I got this challenge now. But before you hit that, again, you have all this flood of things that run through your head and of what it means, and you go worst case scenario oftentimes. Um, and so once you can kind of gather yourself and understand, like, okay, what is MS? What do I got to do now to how does it change my life? I'm going to have a new normal once you kind of figure out what that means for you. Or for me, and I went to, like I told you, I'd get on the treadmill, and I went and got on the treadmill during that time, and I didn't have the rhythm or the balance to do it. And I'd come home and I'd just be in tears because I'm not doing what I normally do, and so um, well, thankfully we're on good medicine, and there's good medicine out there. Ocrevus is what I'm on. That's 2 infusions a year. And I've seen my body has seemed to taken that well. I'm now, I've talked to 3 different doctors when I had MS and, hey, what do I need to do? And every one of them, the first thing they said is keep moving. And so for
Yeah,
for
definitely,
me,
definitely.
there's now that, it was sports where I was like, I was very into basketball, so I already kind of had that mentality of like, you got to practice this if you're going to be good or if you want to be the best you can be. And I had that all through college, and I know I'm much older now, but that same mentality applies to me now every day of like, hey, get on the treadmill at least 20 minutes, keep yourself moving. And so I thankfully I have that kind of background. But going back to your gratitude again, there's just an appreciation now, every day, even just getting out of bed and going, because I had that moment of not being able to get on the treadmill and move, and you just think, God, I want to be able to move, I want to be able to be healthy, I want to be able to play with my kids and do all that, and so just there's a perspective now of just being thankful for each day.
Yeah, I think we've in our household, we've had a lot of medical challenges in both our direct and extended family that have been quite serious as well. And I think those moments are ones that really cause you to take stock of the things that are the most important things to
Mm-hmm.
you. And a lot of times I think it's not always the things that you thought were the most important, right? You know, a lot of times it's the much simpler things, like you said, like just being able to walk on a treadmill. You realize how much more important that is than you ever gave it credit for. So that when you can do that, you're so much more grateful.
Absolutely.
Um, and it does kind of um does kind of shake you up. And I'm so glad that your medication is effective for you, and it's um allowing you to have those moments to be grateful again, and kind of to have a relief from that moment of sort of probably desperation that you felt at that
Yeah.
time.
So one of the things that has stuck is my hands are numb and tingly 24/7. So that's my major symptom. Um, besides sometimes having balance issues, but my if you ever have your hands have went to sleep, that's what I deal with all the time. And so to come back to the MOPO, I obviously that's something. If you looked at me, it's a silent thing. No one really knows that that's going on. And so again, I try to one of the pillars being having a positive attitude. And what does that mean? Every day you get that choice. Are you gonna come to work? Are you gonna come to school being a positive person, or are you gonna come to school and let all your issues and problems overtake you, and now you're mad at everybody? and
Yeah.
so, I keep that perspective of trying to stay positive and in a tough situation.
Yeah. The life I grew up in, we had my grandparents sold Amway. And if anybody's ever sold Amway, you know that motivational speakers are your bread and butter. And I will never forget Art Linkletter talking about stinking thinking and how, you can't get anywhere with stinking thinking. So, that positive mental attitude will carry you a lot farther than anything else will. Keeping your hope up, keeping your faith up, and just keep going and don't quit.
Yeah, definitely, and definitely the faith aspect of it. As you have this thought in your head, like, am I gonna live? Am I gonna die? What does this mean for me as I move forward? You have conversations with God, and moving. As you move forward, there's this like, God, what is my purpose? Going back to my MOPO, what do you want me to get out of this? What are you doing here? There was I don't know if you watched the Chosen ever, but there's that out there called the I'll start this over, sorry. There is episodes in the Chosen where one of Jesus's disciples, James, comes to him. I think, and just to give you a background, I think it's season 3, episode 2. I know that because it meant so much to me watching it. James comes to Jesus. He's hobbling, and he says, Jesus, why haven't you healed me? And Jesus looks at him and says, hey, I could ask my Father right now to heal you, and you would be healed, but you're a person that can handle this. You're a person that's going to go out there with you continue to follow me even with the issues you're having. So you're continuing to trust me, and I can't do that with everybody, but I can trust that I can do it with you. And that hit me so hard because I'm like, dude, God is trusting you to have this issue, and you're still gonna go and say, look, my faith in him is still strong. And it is. And so when I go again, when I talk to the kids, say, hey, what's your faith? What does that look like right now? And for me, it's continuing to trust that Jesus has a plan in all this. And when I get this opportunity, I can say, hey, look, I have these hands that are numb and tingly all the time, but I still wake up every day and I'm up here and I'm ready to go, and let's go.
It reminds me of the thorn that was given to Paul,
Yeah,
as a reminder that, Christ's power is made perfect in weakness.
absolutely.
I can relate to your numb fingertips. I have health issues of my own, but one of them is, I always pronounce it wrong, but I believe it's called Reinhardt's. So I have constantly numb, painful fingertips. And the older I get, the worse it gets for cold.
Mm,
Yeah. Well, not fun.
not fun. Sorry to hear that. I really am. I can relate, and it's no fun.
It's good. Things could always be worse. That's my philosophy in life.
Sure.
Things could always be worse.
The other part of MOPO I was going to share with you is I try to create pillars of what that is. And like I said, one of them's being a positive attitude. But, you see kids today and one of the things again is be coachable, be able to take someone telling you something, someone that's older than you, giving you some advice. How do you handle that? And there's lots of, you see it, I see it a lot where, you're trying to help a kid, you're trying to give them, some wisdom and they just don't want it. And so, teaching them to like, hey, the person that is speaking into you is probably the person that cares the most about you. And I know, again, it's that age of, I'll listen to my friends or I'll listen to, my boyfriend or my girlfriend. I'm not going to listen to you, but I try to continue to just speak life and speak wisdom into them and challenge them to be coachable and to be able to listen to their teachers or parents or, whoever that is for them. And then the other one is just building positive habits at that age. And that's a lifelong thing. That's not just at their age. I ask them, what is your phone situation? How often are you on your phone? And that's a challenge for me too. I have my phone. I like being on it. And obviously there's been studies out there talking about, if they're on the phone, how that mental health can affect them when they're on their phone too much. How much sleep are they getting? What are their eating habits, and what are their relationships? What are their friends? We're such, COVID made us all go inside and be secluded and be, by ourselves. And I believe we're made to be out and have people pouring into us and us pouring into them and be in a community, not set apart, but on their own, but to be together. And so, again, trying to challenge that. And then, being a great teammate, I tell them, I said, hey, listen, if you have aspirations of getting married, you're going to have a teammate for life. and
Truth.
think of that
So
way,
true.
but you gotta be able to care and love and forgive and be able to meet the person, where they're at and you're learning that hopefully as you go throughout life, but hopefully you're just not in it for yourself. And that there's a greater purpose and it's for others. And again, if you get married and you and your wife or husband, how that goes. And then the last one is just to serve. What does it mean to serve? What does it mean to show respect to everybody, not just who you want to? And I know, we just had not to bring up political, but how ugly that had gotten, as I'm so ready for those ads to be off the TV. But just this thought of like, how can I serve the person in front of me, the person that's on my path? There's a good Navy SEAL story. I was listening to the guy talk about how do guys or gals make the Navy SEALs? And the story he tells is, there'll be really bad, cool dudes come in, and you think, well, they're probably going to make it because they have the strength and all this. He says, no, those guys don't always make it, and it's not always the physique and that, but most of the guys that make it are the guys who they're in their last straw. They've went through some trials and issues, and they don't have much strength, but somehow they pull the guy next to them up. And I was waiting for him to say they pull themselves up, but no, they pull the guy next to him up, and that guy helps pull them up. And so
Absolutely.
that whole thing of, serving and being a part of a team and helping everybody that's on your team. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've always said we're given two hands, one to help ourselves and one to help others. So that's so very true.
Yeah.
And on that same topic, and this actually I think carries through several of the pillars that you just mentioned. One of my favorite philosophers is Ralph Waldo Emerson. I'm a deep lover of his philosophy and his words. And one of the things that he always talked about, which even the first time I ever heard it when I was, 16 years old and in 11th grade. So, the age that you're talking to, those kids are hearing you. They may not realize it, but they are, is Emerson believed that the purpose of life was to be useful. And that there was no greater thing that you could do than to make a difference, even a small one, in the world. And so I think a lot of the things that you're talking about there, and even going back to the theme of this being sort of our Thanksgiving episode, I think all of that kind of flows together in that whole philosophy of, just trying to not just be present but be grateful for the people who are giving you wisdom. Be aware, be grateful for yourself and your own personal ability to build good habits for yourself. Honor yourself and do right by yourself by building those habits. And also the idea of serving, being useful to others. I think all of that just really flows so nicely together.
Absolutely.
I agree, Jen, and I'm going to add on to your Emerson there, because I love our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in rising up every time we fail.
It's good.
That was so good, even Batman stole it.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I was going to add is with my book, what I got, as I went through the book, one of the things I really tried to do was think about who has made a difference and who has impacted me to write that book. And lots of people that came to mind were teachers and coaches. And I was very fortunate to be in a community where there were some really good coaches, and there was a tight-knit group. The basketball coach would support the football coach, and it was just a good community that I was able to grow up in. And I, to this day, I still see those coaches. Or one of the other things I was going to say in connecting with people is just texting. It's so easy to send a text to a person, and even, sending a text that says, "Hey, I want to pick you up today. You're on my mind. I said a prayer for you. Just wanted you to know you're being thought of." And I think that's an easy thing to do. That's easy to do with your kids. It's easy to do with family or your friends or whoever. But I tried to, in the book, list out the people who made a difference for me. And then I tried to get a copy of that book to each of those coaches. And so that was cool to reconnect with those people that had made a difference in my life.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oggy, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can learn more about the MOPO life and your books and all the things that you're into these days?
So the best way is to go to my website, mopoforlife.com. That will tell you all about the MOPO. I've had a presence on X. I also have a Facebook page, again, MOPO for Life. And I try to, throughout the week, put out a positive MOPO thought or a positive thing that's going on in my life, and put that out there. So yeah, that's a good way to connect.
Right on.
And just in case our listeners are looking for it, that when he says MOPO for Life, that's the number 4. So MOPO number 4 life.com.
And Oggy, I want to thank you for sharing your story and explaining what makes you unfreaking believable. And I'd also like to thank my 2 besties and co-hosts. And if you have enjoyed this episode, please rate and review it on whatever platform you listen on. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Audible.
You can join our Unfreaking Believable Facebook group and follow us on TikTok and Instagram and X. And you can also join us on Patreon for exclusive content and other perks.
You can also visit our website at www.ufbpodcast.com. And if you have an unfreaking believable story, reach out to us at ufbpodcast@gmail.com we'd like to hear your story too.
Betsy, how about you send us out with one of your quotes of the day? And I apologize if it was Emerson and I stole it.
No, I don't have Emerson today. I actually don't have source for this one, but it was one that really spoke to me today when I was thinking about this episode. It is seek excellence and success will be its faithful companion.
Right on.
Love it.
Could not be more perfect.
I just want to tell you guys, thank you so much for this time with you, and really enjoyed it. And I'm thankful for what you're doing on this podcast. I love that you're connecting with people, and here I am in Indiana, and I get to connect with different people from different states, and so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We have really, really enjoyed having you today. And listeners, we encourage you to check out Oggy's website and check out MOPO for yourself. And remember, as you go out into the world this week, don't just be awesome.
Be unfreaking believable.
See you all next time.